If you're conversant with what is happening around the country, then you're probably aware that a few hours ago, yesterday actually, there was panic in Uasin Gishu after hate leaflets were found spread all over the place. And there was a lot of panic. The DCI ordered an investigation to determine the root of those hate leaflets. And it got me thinking about how much Kenyans undermine the peace that we have. You know, the thing with peace is very delicate. It is a very delicate fabric. If you have never experienced violence, you'd be forgiven for taking it for granted. But if you ask the survivors of the 2007-2008 PEV, then I think they would think otherwise. The thing is, the exact person to blame it's not an easy thing to blame a particular person, because when it comes to instigating violence, there are so many parties that stand to benefit. It could even be the government spreading that. It could be other parties, It's hard to point a finger at a particular person. The only way you can get the root of those leaflets is by asking yourself who stands to benefit in case of violence or in case of spreading that kind of fear in that region. I remember, if you've read the Rwandan history, then you probably know about the genocide that happened in the early 90s in 94, where there were a lot of tensions between the Hutus and the Tutsis. And if you know the ethics or maybe the makings of a genocide or ethnic cleansing, then you probably know that it has steps. It's not something that happens spontaneously. It's usually well calculated. And the first thing is usually to select a group, a target group, dehumanize that group. In the case of Rwanda, the Tutsis were dehumanized by referring to them as cockroaches, and these cockroaches needed to be exterminated for Rwanda to move forward. And you realize once this dehumanization process takes place, where you make a certain group of people appear less human than they actually are by referring them to cockroaches or something else, snakes that need to be killed, then it becomes very easy for neighbor to kill neighbor, because when neighbor is killing neighbor, they're not seeing a human being. It's very hard for neighbor to pick up a machete and hack a neighbor because they will be hacking a human being. The conscience will not allow. But the moment that person is dehumanized and this person does not see a human being as is conducting that act of barbarism, then it becomes very easy for a whole group to turn against a whole group and kill them, like it happened in Rwanda. And also, when there is this ethnic cleansing or genocide, there is always, again, this removing of the individuality of a person. These people, you're not seeing as an individual, you're seen as part of this group that needs to be exterminated. Like if you remember the 2007-2008 PEV, it didn't really matter who you voted for. There are actually people who were killed that voted for the person that was maybe behind the killings or something of the sort. But the fact that you belong to a particular group that is the target of the whole cleansing or something of the sort, then you become part of whatever is happening. So there is the removing of that individuality. And again, if you go back to Rwanda, you remember that I'm talking about maybe people who stand to benefit. If you look at the history and if you look at accounts of people at the moment, you realize there are people who are actually blaming even the current president of Rwanda as being behind the shooting down of Habariyama's plane. Because the killings started when Habariyama's plane was shot down, and at the moment the Hutus were waiting, because the moment that happened, then it was taken as a sign. It was like, these people don't even want the peace agreement. They're killing our president. Habariyama was a Hutu, and they have no respect for what is happening. He had come from Tanzania for that, and the killings began immediately after, and there was they would talk about cutting down the tall trees, because if you look at the Hutus, they're generally taller than the Tutsis are generally taller than the Hutus. And there is a lot of hate. You cannot underestimate the hatred that exists maybe between communities and between people, even living together. There is always that underlying hatred that comes into light when something triggers it. In the case of the Hutus and the Tutsis, you remember when the Belgians were occupying the place, they would favor the Tutsis. They would favor the Tutsis to rule over the Hutus. The Hutus were generally farmers. They're Bantus. The Tutsis are Nilots. They would mostly be pastoralists. And there was this favoritism. And the Germans would do the same thing. So there was this resentment towards the Tutsis by the Hutus. And so the opportunity, when the incitement began, it was about, these people are the cause of your problems. We need to get rid of them. And the plane, Habariama's plane being shot down, was the exact sign they needed. It was exactly what triggered that war. But who shot down that plane? There has been so many speculations. If you look at the Nazis, Nazi German, why were the Jews killed? It is because they were dehumanized. When they were dehumanized by the Nazis, they were made to look as less humans. So it was easy for the average German to go murder a Jew, because he was not murdering a human being, he was murdering a thing. And so as Kenyans, we need to be very careful when politicians are inciting us to violence. Peace is a very important commodity. Peace is very important. The absence of it is something you don't want to think about. Remember, Plato said, it is only the dead who have seen the end of war. Trust me, we don't want war in that country. Look at countries that have had war, political instability and all that stuff. They're still behind, so many years behind. We don't want to be in that kind of a situation. So let's maintain peace during this election. Vote for whoever you want to vote. I have my preferred candidate. You have your preferred candidate. That does not need to make us enemies. At the end of the day, we are brothers. And at the end of the day, we go hustle together. We need to get rid of this resentment we have, because we are always used. You stand to benefit by nothing if you do most of what these politicians want you to do. If a politician tells you to kill a neighbor or maybe start violence or something, you don't benefit in any way, because you have no idea why that is happening in the first place. You're just like pawns in a game of chess. So we need to get rid of this narrative, this violence. We shouldn't fight each other. Let's maintain peace.